Hi, hello, and welcome to another episode of The Dunker Spot. We are part of 342 Productions. I am your host, Nekias Duncan, and joining me as always is my co-host, Steve Jones Jr. Steve, how are you doing, sir?
Aha, feeling good, feeling great, happy to be here, excited to be here. Thank you, Dunkers, for once again embracing your bounce. YouTube, hi, thank you for your support. Nekias, well, wait, Dunker Nation, let's ride. Nekias, a lot of things going on. It's time to hoop it up, but you are a starra.
That's an amazing shot. It is indeed time to hoop it up. The last time we talked in podcast form, anyway, because we talk darn near every day, but last time we talked on the podcast form, we were just past the first round of the NBA draft. We've had the second round of the draft. We've had W action return. We've had the free agent moratorium period begin. We've had trades. We've got new faces in new places. We got old faces in new places. We got old faces returning to old places. There's been a whole lot of stuff. We got a lot to talk about today. So let's jump right into some NBA free agency talk. We start with the top of the market. Paul George, all NBA talent, all-star talent, all defensive talent. No longer a Los Angeles Clipper. Paul George, 4-year maximum contract to the Philadelphia 76ers. Averaged a shade under 23 points per game last year, 5 boards, 3.5 assists, a steal and a half. This is one of the more dynamic talents in the NBA. And he is now joining Joel Embiid, joining Tyrese Maxey, which quick salute to Tyrese Maxey on his deal. 5 years, $204 million, no options on the deal, 5 years straight through. Salute to the young man getting his money. Paul George is a Sixer. I guess a two-part question for you to jump things off. One, how surprised were you that this ultimately ended in Paul George leaving versus this being some kind of leverage play? And two, just your early thoughts on the fit with PG and Philly.
I think the biggest thing is this free agency is a little bit different. It's a little different as far as you're waiting for dominoes to fall. It's something we talked about throughout the start of free agency. A lot of talk about the new CBA, a lot of talk about the apron, but you need one piece to kind of toggle everything. And I think Paul George was the piece overall, because once it became clear, hey, this thing with me and the Clippers might not be going anymore. And that became, hey, it's actually just, we're done. Mm-hmm. And now it's, well, if y'all are done, then which teams have the room? And this is not a spoiler alert, but once Orlando was like, hey, KCP was good.
No P-back.
You started to kind of understand this might be real. And I think that was where I was like, wow, this is the thing that happens. Philadelphia jumping on the opportunity. You know, this was a throwback to a degree because we haven't seen free agency meetings like this in a minute, right?
Feels like that. Anyway, yeah.
So, okay, we're restoring the feeling a little bit, and Paul George able to take his time, find the spot he wants to go to. So I wasn't necessarily surprised Paul George went to Philly. I guess the fit is what's the biggest key to me. Like, hey, we have seen Tyrese Maxey's growth. We have seen the growth between Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid with their two-man game. And Paul George now slots in very well with that. Obviously, we know he can score the ball. The way that Philadelphia can use him off ball in different actions. When you have those three, there's a lot of things you can run to kind of just mess with defenses and force them to make decisions on who do you want to help off of. There's a lot of things you can do. We saw Joel Embiid with a lot of dribble handoffs. Paul George fits in that as far as his ability to, cut off ball. I think that it just gives Philadelphia another element. They can go side to side now. You can have an action with Tyrese Maxey. If it doesn't work, now you have Paul George on the other side. If that doesn't work, you have Joel Embiid and any place in the court. 3-point line, elbow, post up. So I think that's going to be really fun. I think Paul George can slot in to defend at a certain level with this team. Mm-hmm. And it just fits what they need. The Sixers, as hobbled as they were in that Knicks series, they had a shot, but they needed another person to get that done, because the Maxey and Embiid action was really hard for the Knicks to guard. Imagine having to deal with that with also, hey, there's Paul George over there. And now if he's got it going, that's a whole different element. So I think the fit makes sense. The opportunity makes sense. This is the time, the window to go for it. It would be very hard for them to roll over the space again. So if you can pay off with Paul George, it's very good. And also just quick shout out to Ramona Shelburne for, hey, the time deadline moved up for meetings, but Philadelphia was still late.
Oh.
And so I'm just thinking of Philadelphia 76ers owner Josh Harris and Julius Erving trying to navigate being late.
They're just in the Uber, just upset. This is why we take choppers. But no, that's got to be a good bit. I guess first, before getting back into the actual basketball, this could just be short-term memory on my part as a youth. How often have we seen team losing free agent release statement before the free agent goes to the other team officially?
Like, that's a good call. They got that out pretty quick. Hey, just so y'all know,
we tried and all. We just could not get to a number. And then y'all see these aprons, right? We had a plan to retain all these dudes and stay flexible, but he wanted some more money, and we couldn't do that. So now he is in Philly.
But we thank him for what he did, but we really wanted to keep him.
But we couldn't do it with what he was asking. Like, it was just very, very random.
Well, I think it was because it was like 17 people were like, "Hey, he's not staying with the Clippers, y'all." And so they were like, "You know what?"
But that's what gets funny, because it's not even you getting ahead of it. If 17 people are already saying, "Hey, dog, this ain't going right," and it's like the contrast of this all happening as we get more and more on the Klay Thompson front. Well, actually, he's not even gotten an offer. They ain't even talking like that. It's like, dang, man, this is the top of the market. I thought wings were important. What happened to wings being highly valued? They obviously got their money when I talk about it. But it's just funny to watch, I guess, just a smoke around those two leaving. It's just really, really interesting. You think about the history with Klay and the Warriors. Again, we're going to get to that a little bit later. And with Paul George, everything that the Clippers gave up to bring him and Kawhi in at the same time. And for it to not only end, but to end on, we'll call it weird terms, at least from the outside looking in. Like, it's just an interesting dynamic. But to the actual basketball of it, like, I love the fit. As someone who is just a huge fan of Paul George, the basketball player, like, the beauty of Paul George is his ability to do just about anything you ask him to. He can scale up or down depending on who he's playing with, what the situation calls for. And so his ability to shoot, his ability to drive, his ability to play make, his ability to defend, that's going to certainly have to perk back up to more consistent levels, I'll say, in Philadelphia. But as you were talking about him being able to play off of Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid in their two-man action, that was one of the early thoughts that I had when the signing was announced. And as I was getting notes together, I was like, hey, wait a minute. Not only do I want to see what Paul George does as a catch-and-shoot threat, because I do think it's a little under-discussed that he's not just a great shooter. He is a historically great shooter and has been throughout his career. I was like, let's see what the catch-and-shoot numbers are. And I want to see what the catch-and-shoot numbers are off of pick and rolls. What does it look like when he's playing off of, like, Harden Zubats or, going back or whatever? So since 2013, 2014, as far back as second spectrum goes with catch-and-shoot threes, only 3 players have made more catch-and-shoot threes than Paul George during that span. Would you like to guess who they are? I know you get 2 off rip.
Who are they?
Well, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson would naturally be 2. The third one, I really wanted you to try to guess, Kevin Love.
Shout out Kevin Love.
That was one of the names where, like, I wouldn't have thought about it, but as the name pops, it's like, oh, you know what? That is right. That's a whole lot of LeBron and all that good stuff. So it makes sense there. But those are the only 3 guys that have made more catch-and-shoot threes than Paul George since 2013, 2014. Paul George a shade under 41% on those catch-and-shoot threes. He is, over that same stretch, one of 33 players to take at least 900 catch-and-shoot threes following a pick and roll. He has drained 42.3% of those threes. And that efficiency clip is third behind Buddy Hield and Klay Thompson. And he shot 45.3% on those threes, catch-and-shoot threes following a pick and roll last year. So just thinking about that dynamic as Philadelphia played with super high pick and rolls with Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid, some of those lower ones around the arc or step inside the arc. If Paul George is the single shooter, good luck deciding what you want to do as that defender. Do I want to tag Joel Embiid? Do I want to get here and then Joel Embiid just decides, I'm just going to post you up, now you can't move? Do I just leave that alone and now Joel Embiid just gets to wreak havoc from the free throw line or lower. Like, that's just nasty stuff. It's really nasty stuff. And then you think about just the Embiid-less minutes for Philadelphia, which has consistently been a problem throughout this era. You saw the growth of Tyrese Maxey growing as like just a pure creator, not only being able to get his own, but also get other guys involved without a beat on the floor. If you want to, you can just have Maxey and Paul George out there together while Embiid sits. That is such a luxury for this group. And those are kind of the margin things to where even if those minutes aren't super positive, I would guess that they are if they're both on the floor. But even if they aren't, if you can go from we're not minus 12 per 100 when Embiid on the bench, and that drops to -3, even winning that kind of margin or just lowering that kind of negativity helps you as you zoom out. And so I'm really excited about what the lineup combinations are going to be. Again, Paul George's ability to kind of slide in between those guys and take on more on-ball usage if necessary. Just looking at last year, roughly 1.1 points per possession on any trip featuring a Paul George pick and roll. 1.07 points per possession on trips featuring a Paul George ISO or with him coming off of the off-ball screen. 1.09 points per possession on drives. 1.27 points per possession when facing a closeout last year, which was second among 65 players to face at least 500. You know who was number one on that list?
Who?
Sam Hauser. Wouldn't have guessed that one, now would you?
No.
Yeah, playing off the Jays, knocking down all kinds of threes, all that good stuff. But if you raise the closeout limit, then Paul George goes number one on that list. But with the 500 filter, Sam Hauser's there. But the point being, Paul George is going to do a very good job of complementing and also taking pressure off of those guys, provided he is healthy. I think the one thing to keep an eye on with PG, outside of playoff narrative stuff, whatever, I do think it's worth noting career low rim rate for him last year. Roughly 20% of his shots came at the rim last season with the Clippers. I am curious to see if the context helps get that number up, if he just has a mentality to get downhill a little bit more than he did last year, and being able to play off of Maxey and Joel Embiid, does that situation help him do that? So I think it is worth keeping an eye on that, especially once you get into a playoff setting. Joel Embiid, as he was playing banged up, but indeed didn't pressure the rim as often or as consistently as you would have liked, particularly late in games. Defenses, the Knicks certainly tried their best to keep Tyrese Maxey out of the paint, shading him to one side. Let's get you to your weak hand. Let's see if you can get downhill here. So how much does Paul George help that problem is something I'm keeping an eye on. But overall, this is a tremendous talent. On paper, the fit just makes all the sense in the world. And I think you worry about, year 3 or year 4 of that contract when it gets there. You're trying to maximize the Joel Embiid window right now. And, over the next couple of years, Philly, at least on paper, are very much up there in terms of Eastern Conference contenders.
Well, I mean, I think that's I know people are concerned about injuries. I try not to factor in injuries because, while it's real, I just don't wish that on people. So it's like, I would like for everyone to be healthy. So I'm going to talk like everyone's going to be healthy. I think one of the things, as you mentioned, that is, okay, Paul George being able to play off the speed of Tyrese Maxey and the weight of Joel Embiid and where you can space him. Does that encourage the drives more? How much does he now get to attack scrambling defenses? It's not to say he didn't have talent with the Clippers. The issue with the Clippers was more, hey, we can switch these actions. We can show help on this person. It's not necessarily coming off you. So is there going to be more of a natural flow to where Paul George can attack scrambling defenses in a different way than we've seen the last couple of years? I think that will be the fun part to kind of see how do they kind of navigate these things. So we've seen, hey, Joel Embiid post up or elbow touch, Tyrese 1 pass away, Paul George 2 passes away. You have a decision to make. So I think that's where the fun kind of gets into it. But the biggest thing is this is the opportunity. If you're Philadelphia and you have Joel Embiid, you have Tyrese Maxey, you have this space, you have to do something. It's very hard to kind of look at it and be like, well, let's roll it over to next year, because those teams that are ahead of you are looking to get better. The Celtics are still the Celtics. The Knicks have made a big run. You have to deal with Milwaukee, who's upset with how their season went. You got to deal with Miami, who's upset with how their season went. Like, there are dynamics to it. So you can't just fall back in the East. So I think it's going to be really fun. I think it's going to be really fun. Also, shout out another detail I got from Ramona Shelburn's article. Paul George had an Allen Iverson t-shirt on when everybody pulled up.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Did you think he wanted to be there? Also, can we respectfully messy?
What's up?
Hey, how you think Dr. J felt about that shirt? You ain't had one for me? You want to?
Young man.
I understand, but also, hey, think about who won here. But no, shout out to Paul George. We already mentioned Tyrese Maxey back on a 5-year, $204 million max extension. Kelly Oubre also coming back 2 years, $16.3 million. And as far as the actual additions, Andre Drummond, welcome back. 2 years, a little over $10 million. Player option in the second year. Eric Gordon joined the squad, a 1-year deal worth $3.3 million, which I think is the vet's minimum or slightly above it. I guess between Drummond and Eric Gordon, we're going to talk about all of them, but where do you want to start with those guys?
So, I mean, I think we can, I would probably just go overall. The fact that the Sixers were able to enhance their team in a way. Getting Kelly Oubre back was huge for them because I think he really worked for their team. We saw him pop defensively. We saw him pop offensively. And now with Paul George, if you're going to tell me there's a lineup where it's Maxey, Oubre, Paul George out there together, that's kind of fun. So I think that's a big piece for it. Being able to add Andre Drummond, super underrated, as Andre Drummond has kind of just morphed into this, I know exactly what I need to do for your team off the bench. If Embiid is going to have to rest at times, you can trust Andre Drummond in a different way. So I think that's a positive. You know, you can have consistency. He's going to screen. He's going to roll. He's going to rebound. The defense is going to be there. It's just solid, like, to be able to know, okay, we have Andre Drummond behind Joel Embiid. Like, I think that's a big win for Philadelphia. As you mentioned earlier, the non-Embiid minutes, I think he's going to help. Eric Gordon feels like the not the Buddy Hield replacement, but the Buddy Hield idea where, hey, let's have someone who can score and shoot, that could close games, that could carry or help a second unit. But we trust to be able to do these things. I think this may be a better environment for him than Phoenix to a degree, as far as the expectation goes, to where, hey, they needed him to do this. And if you don't do this, then it looks a different way. In Philadelphia, while he may be asked to do the same things, there may be more wiggle room. So is he playing next to Tyrese Maxey? Does he have more room with the second unit? Is he playing off of Embiid? So I think Philadelphia being able to piece things together has been a really fun thing, because you only have this room one time. So can we just gather our overall depth to get ourselves in a different position?
Yeah. I like the Buddy Hield framing, as, you know, they're not similar players outside like super broad strokes. We need you to bring offense to complement our main guys. But thinking about what Eric Gordon provides that Buddy Hield maybe didn't, like, I do think even at this stage, like, there is a different rim element to Eric Gordon than what you may get from Buddy Hield. And as we saw what the Buddy Hield minutes looked like, you know, as the second half of the year went on, I do think just in terms of his strength, his IQ, and just overall switchability because of that strength, Nick Nurse may just trust him more in bigger spots than he trusted Buddy Hield, just looking at the defense between those two. So being able to maintain not the type of shooter, because I think we can both agree Buddy's a better shooter than Eric Gordon, but Eric Gordon isn't scared to spot up from 27 to 28 feet. So if you want to play him alongside of Joel Embiid in those post-ups, what does that look like? If he is with the second unit while Tyrese Maxey is handling things, if they want to go fast, if they want to go super high pick and rolls, now you got Eric Gordon at the hash, the opposite hash, to open up a little bit more space for some of the things that Philadelphia wants to run. So, like, I like that fit. Shot roughly 38% from three last year on high volume. So certainly we'll put the ball up and we'll put it in the basket. And to the Andre Drummond point, you know, as the resident Paul Reed fan on here, and someone who enjoyed some of the strides made from Paul Reed last year, I will say rebounding remained an issue in his minutes. Andre Drummond, I don't think you're going to have the same. I don't think you're going to have the same questions with Andre Drummond man in the five. It's not like Philly's explored with Paul Reed at the 4 too. So, like, if he's back in the fold, then, like, wouldn't surprise me to see them play together in the regular season. Now, how viable that is a different conversation, but at the very least, I wouldn't be surprised if we see it. But Andre Drummond certainly helps in that center spot. You already talked about Kelly Oubre. Just his aggressiveness getting downhill, as I talked a little bit about, hey, how often is Paul George going to do that? I don't have those questions about Kelly Oubre. And if he is just now going to be, you know, chaos agent with the second unit, complimentary, we're just going to run and run and run and drive and run. Kelly Oubre certainly fits into that ideal, had a good year last year. So this feels like an A or an A+ offseason so far for Philadelphia. Naturally, the games are not won on paper, and an A offseason grade sounds great. If the Sixers start out 9-6, we're going to feel differently. But as of right now, like, it's hard to find fault with what Philadelphia did. I guess just very quickly, is there another player type you would like to see them try to add this offseason? Like, we're like 3 days into free agency, so there's plenty of time.
Well, I mean, this has been the kind of fun part of the free agency, to where, okay, there's a lot of names that are available, right? And we've had discussions and we go back and forth, and it's like, well, I need to see what do they have?
Yeah.
And who can they add to it? So I think for Philadelphia, you're probably looking high IQ. Can we get another point guard in the room? Can we maybe get some more size to kind of just make sure we have lineup versatility to a degree?
Yeah.
I think bigs, you're fine. So I think, hey, can we get some solid guard play? Can we get maybe a wing or two and put ourselves in a position to compete with these teams in a playoff run? Because you're going to need the lineup versatility against Boston, against the Knicks, to get through it. So that's probably where I'm keeping an eye on. How much lineup versatility can they kind of add to what they have put together?
Okay, makes sense. Like, I was going to say, like, another wing would probably be helpful. Nicholas Batum, we'll talk about him a little bit later. He is back with the Clippers. We'll talk about the whole Clipper, all their signs a little bit later in the show. But he's not there. I think Robert Covington is still a free agent right now. I'm not sure if he's going to return to Philadelphia or not. But if you do lose Batum and Covington to a lesser extent, just having those kind of rangy wings with the second unit, like, if they can replenish that a little bit, because even with what I said about Eric Gordon being a defensive upgrade from Buddy Hield, he is technically smaller than Buddy Hield. And neither of those guys are like traditional wing/forward size. They're more guard size. So to your versatility point, if Philadelphia can add another wing, that would certainly be helpful. But right now, the team still looks pretty darn good. While we're on the wing, we can move on to Dallas, the other star name departure rather. Klay Thompson, no longer a member of the Golden State Warriors. A 3-year, $50 million deal going to Dallas in a sign and trade. Klay averaged 18 points per game, shot nearly 39% from 3 on 9 attempts last season. In that sign and trade, 2 second-round picks going to the Golden State Warriors, the least favorable of Denver and Philly second-round pick in 2025, and Dallas's own 2031 second-rounder, if you care about that part. And the Hornets sneaking in here and getting Josh Green in the deal, which raises the brow for me as Charlotte tries to add to their wing room. But on the Klay Thompson front, we talked about this during the Bleacher Report free agency show that we did on Sunday afternoon. That's up on YouTube if you want to check that out as well. I am intrigued by Klay playing off of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving for very obvious reasons. Even at this stage of his career, Klay Thompson can shoot the absolute leather off of the basketball. He had an up and down year last year. Shot well, didn't shoot well, shot well again, was a starter, then came off the bench, went back to the starting lineup, and it ended with 39% from 3 on 9 attempts. If that's what up and down Klay Thompson looks like, what does Klay Thompson playing off of Luka Doncic, who just creates open threes in his sleep? Kyrie Irving, who could put tremendous amounts of pressure on the rim, or just on defenses in general, and a Dallas team that sneakily, or not so sneakily for Dallas fans, but sneakily, top 10 in pace last year, played a little bit faster, more intentional getting into transition. What does Klay Thompson look like playing off of those guys? It is going to be a different style in terms of the offense, a whole lot of motion, a whole lot of off-ball movement, a whole lot of screening for Golden State. Dallas now has the opportunity to build more of that type of stuff into their base offense. I'm curious to see just how quickly things gel on that front. But we've already seen elements of Tim Hardaway Jr. being used as the movement threat in Dallas. We've seen what all the different types of 77 or double drag or whatever variations Dallas has run, more so throughout a pick and roll lens. Now you can add counters with Klay Thompson being involved. You can either just space him outside of those double drag looks, or Klay Thompson is your first screener now. Or Klay Thompson is your second screener, and now he's coming off of another screen after that. And now they can flow out of it. There are so many opportunities for this Dallas offense now. I'm just really excited about what that fit's going to look like offensively. I do have some questions about the other side of the ball, well, I'll leave it there. Steve, your early thoughts on the Klay Thompson fit in Dallas?
I'm surprised you didn't lead with the Josh Green to Charlotte. when you're talking about Klay Thompson. But I really like the Dallas fit. It was one of the things where I was thinking where are potential landing spots. Dallas made a lot of sense. His ability to shoot in an offense where Luka can create against all of the schemes next to Kyrie Irving makes a lot of sense to me. Every time we talk about a Dallas playoff run, can they make the defense pay? Can they make the defense pay? That helps if you have a shooter like Klay Thompson and you can put him in different spots on the court based on how Luka operates. So if you can even build a scenario where Klay and Kyrie are on the same side where Luka's operating pick and roll, you have to make a decision. Klay in the weak side corner or Kyrie in the weak side corner, their ability to drive. Now is he getting driving kicks? Like, I think there's a lot of talk about, hey, it's going to be different. It's not the Warriors motion offense. Shooting is shooting, baby. Let's talk about it. Shooting is shooting. Everything you want to say about Klay Thompson, he still shot that ball and it still went in. So I think that's going to be one of those things. I point to the minutes where Klay played off of Chris Paul. And Chris Paul was operating pick and roll, and it was a drop, and it was drive kick, and Klay was able to still knock things down. So I think that part's going to work itself through. He's going to add an element to the Dallas Mavericks offense. If you are someone who has wanted to see more movement from Dallas, less, what's that word everyone says?
Heliocentric.
If you want to see less of that, hey, we have Klay Thompson that we can involve in actions. And yes, folks, I imagine that Jason Kidd and the Dallas Mavericks coaching staff will look at Klay Thompson and figure out how to have people set screens for him so he can do things off the ball. Just want to make sure that's heard, because apparently that seems like a novel concept. You can also put Kyrie in movement too. So you can have Klay and Kyrie kind of do some things together. Just want to keep that, put that out there in the atmosphere.
Hey, didn't they put Kyrie in movement last year?
They did, but it's fine. It's fine. People don't pay attention. It's fine. He also fits into just the element of Dallas. We want to have size. Like, I know there are going to be question marks. I'm certainly expecting you to have some about the defense from Klay Thompson. But did anyone really think the defense would be that good with Luka and Kyrie?
No. Particularly after, like March, post All-Star break, but really like after like March 8th, they were just the best defense in the league.
So schematically, they have at least a base or a concept to where, hey, we need activity. We have switching. We have now multiple people that we feel comfortable with in a lineup. If we can get the switching in, we can get our help in. I think Klay Thompson has shown that he can help in that element. So I think it's just a big plus for Dallas as far as what do we need to do to add to what we have already built to continue or sustain this run. I think it's a big one.
Okay, I got you. Like, I think just we can go ahead and go to the defense, and then from there, unless we have more Klay thoughts, we can go to a defender that they added so far this offseason. But I guess to the Klay defense thing, I'm worried more so about, I know you get on me about this all the time, but like I'm thinking about potential playoff matchups. And like, okay, who's matching up with who exactly? Since you're already kind of baking in, we want to put Luka on this guy so he doesn't have to work as hard. Like, sometimes it's an element of we don't think Luka can guard this guy, but for the most part, he's going to do a lot offensively. We want to conserve energy where we can, etc. So if you're already kind of allocating that type of spot to Luka, what Dallas was able to do last year was Derrick Jones Jr., you get the point of attack guy or the shiftier wing. PJ Washington, you get the bulkier play, the bulkier wing. And Kyrie, you take off guard, whatever. If it's now Luka, Kyrie, and Klay Thompson, you're hoping for a return to form for Klay defensively, as there has been some slippage, which makes sense. He's getting older. He's dealt with lower body injuries, not just injuries, but lower body injuries. So it's understandable why he has slipped from his all defense or near all defense level over the last few years. But it is fair to acknowledge that point. And so I do think it's easy. I'm not pressing the big red button because I think Dallas already switches quite a bit. They got better at scram switching last year. I would imagine they just further lean into, no matter what the matchups are, we're just going to switch a whole bunch of stuff. If there's a huge size mismatch, we will just be able to scram Kyrie out of here or scram Klay out of here. So I don't think it's worth pressing the big red button about. I do think it is worth acknowledging, hey, going from Derrick Jones Jr. to Klay Thompson is a downgrade defensively. And against some of the best scorers in the league, if it is just 12 on the clock, this guy on an island, I do feel a little bit worse about the initial containment. Dallas does a good job of loading up. But I do think just in terms of initial containment, how often someone just beats the first level of defense, I do think Dallas took a hit there.
Let's talk about it.
Okay.
Derrick Jones Jr. defended his tail off. When did Derrick Jones Jr. defend his tail off?
In the postseason.
In the playoffs. What's the most recent thing we've seen?
Derrick Jones Jr. not having that much fun against Boston.
No. But I mean, we saw the playoffs. So Derrick Jones Jr. turned up in that Clippers series. Hey, Paul George, turning your water off. Hey, Shea, I'm here. Hey, that element was brought and raised Dallas to a different level. So it's more of a salute to Derrick Jones Jr. Than a downgrade to Klay. For me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think the bigger key for Dallas is, can everyone hold up? And what we saw in this run was, we can switch Kyrie against a lot more people than they think we can. And we feel comfortable with that. Luka's going to have a target on his back, but hey, there's some of these matchups where he can handle it. And if he doesn't, we have help behind it. I think the thing you can't have is, if you're Dallas, is we can tap the Luka button and we can tap the Klay button. I don't expect that Dallas will get there, but that's what you want to avoid. Because if it's now, hey, we feel comfortable with these matchups and these switches against both of them, that's going to be a problem. I think that Klay will likely be energized to reprove himself on that end of the floor based on conversation that is going on. Is he a little older? Yes. Is he really good in help defense? Yes. Is there going to be a lot of switching? Probably. So now it becomes, okay, actually, do you remember when PJ Washington defended or debuted for Dallas? Do you remember who they had PJ Washington guard in that first game?
They had that man checked in and said, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, hello.
So that's where it's like, okay, does PJ Washington now scale up and take those point of attack matchups? And does Klay slide into, quote unquote, the PJ role? And is that the bit? And now, okay, if I need to do this, I can have activity, I can switch. We got a big behind me, so I know exactly what we're doing. I think that's the schematic part with Dallas. They're used to having people who are at a certain level defensively. And so for me, it's your containment point is key. But for me, if Dallas isn't hitting the rotations and they can't switch, they're cooked no matter what, no matter who the personnel is. So that's where I'm like, hey, I'm not pushing back against it. I would just add these little context points. And I think that Klay has the ability to guard more people than expected. He just can't become a target. Because if we can just roll the dice and be like, actually, we want this person to attack Kyrie, we want this person to attack Luka, we want this person to attack Klay, then they're in trouble. But is that a new problem?
No, not necessarily a new one. I think if nothing else, first, very quickly, as we both mentioned the switching, Dallas was 5th in pick and roll switch rate last year. They're one of 5 teams to switch 30% or more of pick and rolls. So just to toss a number on that point. I think for me, again, I'm not pressing the big red button on Klay defensively and Dallas defenses overall, because we have the sample of we switch a bunch. Also, we are very intentional about the type of help that we show behind whatever switch we throw. And so even if you beat insert player here, if you beat Luka, you're driving into all of this. We saw it a whole bunch in the OKC series. I guess for me, my mind goes to the help is super important. If they have to rely on this help all the time, what does that look like? Not that they can't do it, but I want that working in conjunction versus we have to scramble all the time. We're just really good at scrambling. I think it's kind of similar to the question that you posed with OKC's defense last year during the regular season. Like, hey, they do a good job with these doubles. They do in general fly around. What happens when teams are just able to kind of take advantage of this help? And obviously not every team is Boston, who just won a title. But we also saw when Dallas's help can get dinged or when Dallas's help can be moved, the containment becomes a little bit more important. And so, like, it's within those matchups, as we just saw Dallas in the finals, they obviously have championship aspirations. My mind goes to, okay, when they get to second round, if they get to the conference finals, are they going to be okay now? And or does the shooting bump from Klay Thompson in particular just make it matter less? Because now the offense, which very quiet, they didn't perform at peak level during the finals. The offense never really popped to like regular season levels for Dallas. We saw it in pockets, but it's, overall in numbers wise, like it didn't pop that way. Do we just see a return to that because Klay's there? And that just makes the defensive questions a little bit lower on the volume scale. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. But overall, I think Klay certainly helps.
Well, as I say, before we move on, I do want to add the fresh start element to it. Mm-hmm. And this being a new spot, yeah, he's going to have to adjust. But hey, based on everything that happened maybe these last 2 years, how I felt about that, this team wants me here. Mm-hmm. I have a chance to compete at a high level and prove myself again with a team that thinks I can be the piece that gets them there.
Yeah.
There's value that. We're all humans. Everybody wants to be wanted. You don't want to put up the who want me and get 100% no.
Who want me? Gosh darn it. That's tremendous work. You know who else Dallas wanted? Naji Marshall, who signed a 3-year, $27 million deal to join the Dallas Mavericks. And let me tell you, I feel like you in particular were the one kind of banging on that drum last year. Like, hey, Naji's about to get himself paid. New Orleans probably wants to keep him because he's good, but somebody's giving that man money. I did not anticipate Dallas being the team, especially in light of Derrick Jones Jr.'s free agency. But man, do I love Naji Marshall with this group as a guy that can defend. But more importantly, I think I won't say more importantly, but to the other end of the floor. The biggest question mark surrounding Naji Marshall is how real the shooting is. He did shoot 39% from three last year. Teams did not defend him largely like a 39% three-point shooter. That was also a career high in terms of three-point shooting. Something that you were consistent about throughout the Dallas run was, hey, these role guys, you have to make the defense pay. Luka's going to get this amount of attention. Kyrie's going to get this amount of attention. You got to knock down shots. Naji Marshall certainly falls in the got to knock down shots group of folks. But what he does as a driver, what he does as a passer, what he can do in transition, the overall toughness that he brings, I think he's certainly going to fit that locker room. I am very excited to just see him and PJ Washington on the floor together. And what kind of mini skirmishes they may get into while they're on the floor together with opposing teams naturally. But like, I think that's just a level of toughness, switchability, versatility that he brings. Like, I just love those kind of Swiss Army knife guys. And if the shooting holds up, with all due respect to Derrick Jones Jr., I don't think they'll end up missing him that much if Naji's able to fill in those kind of gaps. Because as good as DJJ was for them, and I do think just overall, like, DJJ is a better defender than Naji. I don't think there's a large gap between the two. Offensively with DJJ, it was kind of knock down corner three, catch lob in transition. Oh no, what else? He got better as a driver against closeouts, but that still isn't a comfortable part of his game. You don't have those questions about attacking closeouts with more than one dribble with Naji Marshall. He can take 2 or 3, get into a mid-range jumper, or get into a push shot, or get all the way downhill, or drop a lay down pass, or make a skip to the opposite corner. Like, Naji is a different level of player in terms of just overall ball skill than Derrick Jones Jr. And playing off of a guy like Luka that can draw to the way that he does, like, that's an insanely valuable skill set to have. So again, he has to knock down shots, but I really like that signing for Dallas.
A lot of people love the Naji signing to Dallas, and for a lot of the reasons that you expertly laid out. I think the thing is, it's hard when you lose Derrick Jones Jr., who had that kind of run in the playoffs. I totally understand, and it's no disrespect to Derrick Jones Jr. I think for me with Naji, he fits what Dallas wants. Dallas has a type. They understand the concept, and sometimes for a team, a player's play can now say, okay, we may like this player, but if this player leaves, we need this. Mm-hmm. And I think this may be the role where it's like, all right, we may not be able to keep Derrick Jones Jr. We have Naji Marshall. We can get Naji. He can fill this role. Again, Dorian Finney-Smith was probably the concept, right? Mm-hmm. We couldn't keep him, but we need to have someone that's like that. And so we need to continue to evolve that. I think that Naji's ability to drive the basketball really should pop in Dallas. How much does he help him in transition? How much can he drive closeouts? Because again, remember, with the personnel that they have, there's going to be teams in rotation more than likely. So can he now drive closeouts, finish in the paint, keep the drive and kick going? The shot is going to have to be real, but that's just a Dallas thing. Like, if you are playing next to Luka and Kyrie, You're going to have to be someone who makes the defense pay. Shooting is a part of that. I think that just gives Dallas more lineup versatility as far as we have more of these people who can defend certain positions, who have size, who have length, who have activity, and we feel confident with that. So, that's a positive. If you're looking at, hey, we have Klay, we have Naji, we'll talk about it later, but Quentin Grimes, I feel more comfortable with those guys fitting what we need than opposed to, well, do we play Tim Hardaway Jr. this time, or do we go to, you know what I mean? No. These are our guys.
These are guys, yeah.
This is what we do. We're good. So I think that helps overall as a coach or as an organization to have those kind of guys. So I think Naji's going to have that kind of impact. Threes are going to be key, but he's a plus for them. He's a real plus for them.
He is a plus. And actually, while we're here, we can go ahead and just rope in the Dallas-Detroit trade as that happened during draft time. But the Mavericks getting Quentin Grimes, sending out Tim Hardaway Jr. and 3 second-round picks, a 25 second-rounder via Toronto, and 2 second-rounders in 2028. I want a healthy run for Quentin Grimes. I want a healthy run for Quentin Grimes, and I want a consistent playing time run for Quentin Grimes. But I think we saw early in the Knicks stint when he got playing time, this is someone who is really good at attacking closeouts. Catch and fire, catch and drive immediately, catch and pass and keep things going. And I think being able to not only take advantage of those scramble situations, but being able to maintain those advantages, very important for this Dallas group. And if Quentin Grimes can get back to form physically, I think we see the defense perk back up. We didn't turn our eyes back to the shooting, but we have had a sample of him being able to knock down shots from the perimeter. I think him as technically the Josh Green replacement, where some of the questions we had with Josh were, hey, so you caught the ball when you were open. Did you immediately shoot? Did you immediately drive? Hey, how many of these open shots are you passing up? I think the bet for Dallas is that you have fewer of those sequences with Quentin Grimes, and it just becomes an efficiency deal versus, hey, how quickly are you doing this? I think it's a reasonable bet for Dallas to make. And so I'm excited to see what Quentin Grimes looks like in Dallas.
This is a safe space?
Yeah.
Can I be respectfully messy for 2 seconds?
Sure.
So when the trade first went down, I was like, hey, so the worst case is Quentin Grimes is just also Josh Green, right? No disrespect, obviously. But then it just turned into, Quentin Grimes is...
Yeah, it's just kind of...
Well, I think, again, it goes back to what Dallas is looking for with what they want defensively. They want size. They want activity. The biggest thing for me with Quentin Grimes in Dallas is, can he get back to the form overall? Can the defense have an impact? Which I think it will. He's back in a winning situation to a place that wants him to be there. I think in New York, he kind of was like, all right, cool. I made this leap. I need to make these threes. It's the same scenario in Dallas, but a different context to a degree, if that makes sense, to where, I need to do this, but I can also just kind of play my game. That could be something that happens. We've seen that happen with Jason Kidd teams where, hey, just go play. So I think the one thing that bothered me with this last year for Quentin Grimes, outside of injury, the volume of 3-point shooting compared to twos was just off. Like in New York, while he played there, he took 286 field goals. 212 of those were threes. In Detroit, he took 42 field goals. 28 of those were threes. That puts you in a box. He needs to get back to, yes, I knock down shots, but I drive closeouts. I can do other things. I take twos. Like, he has to get back to that mix as opposed to just lasering in on, I need to be a shooter. And so I think that's where he can help in Dallas if he's just goes out there and play, as opposed to just, I need to make threes. That's probably my biggest thing. I think the defense is going to pop. It's a winning environment. Can he navigate that portion? Because if he's going to beat closeouts, mix in some threes and give you defense, what more could Dallas ask for?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And then just very quickly on the Detroit side, getting Tim Hardaway Jr. in there for a year. I think the 3-point shooting can certainly be valuable for a Detroit team that, let's say, did not shoot the ball particularly well and is certainly trying to add more space and spacing around Cade Cunningham, who is about to sign a 5-year deal worth over $220 million. He's getting maxed out. Shooting's going to be very important for him. So I do think Tim Hardaway Jr. as a guy that can add to their movement in terms of the sets that they run, and just in general as a guy that can knock down shots from the perimeter, should be helpful. Now, how additive he's going to be overall, if you're thinking about, playmaking, drives, defense as a concept, etc., I think it's fair to question those portions. I do think this was very clearly for Detroit. We get a veteran that can shoot, and also we get some picks. Let's go ahead and add to the chest real quick. We're still trying to rebuild real quick. Let's get some more assets in the room. So I do think it's a double dose there. They're still very much in. We have cap space. Come to us. I think it's a reasonable bet since it's not a long-term contract for Tim Hardaway Jr. And if he does shoot well the first half of the year, does a contender or, just a strong playoff team say, hey, we can use this guy for a few months. Here's a young guy that we aren't playing. Here's a second-round pick. Let's have some fun. Or, hey, Tim, we give back this amount. You can go wherever you want to, I guess, outside of those second apron teams since he's making more than that. But, hey, here you go. Handshake emoji. Have your fun on a better team than us. So I think it's reasonable. It's short term. It's going to be fine on that front. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, Dallas fans yelled at me about Tim Hardaway Jr., but Tim Hardaway Jr. was really good pre-All-Star break. Like, he was firmly in the sixth man of the year conversations. I think he shifted, obviously, because he had the injuries, and the team shifted. Like, hey, we have more defenders. This defense thing really works for us. We don't have as much wiggle room for the defensive miscues or the shots you may take. So,
you can't be both.
So, you know what I mean? Like, no offense, but that happens. And a Detroit team that is desperately, and I mean desperately, if you ask any Piston fan, desperately has wanted spacing, Tim Hardaway Jr. helps. We can get movement. We can actually space the floor a little bit. And as you mentioned, hey, if this works, hey, maybe you move on. If it doesn't, maybe you stay here. But it's a contract year, big dog.
Sure is.
Dap me up.
I respect that. And then before we officially move off of Dallas as a concept, I'll just very quickly circle back to the Klay trade. Josh Green and Charlotte. I'll give you a quick 30 seconds because I know how you get when I talk about the Hornets on here. I would like to see healthy LaMelo, but if you are putting Josh Green in a situation to where the Hornets respectfully are not contending for a championship this year, lower stakes, we're going to play fast with LaMelo on the floor. Add some defense, add some connectivity to see if the decision-making speed continues to perk up, if the willingness to fire for three perks up. Are you surprised if he has a Cody Martin-like run? To where, hey, wait a minute, this defense is good. Hey, wait a minute, here are these drives. Hey, wait, he's making some nice passes. Do we see that kind of, again, not saying he's going to be Cody Martin. Like, I imagine people hear that and it's like, oh, that's slander. But I'm saying in general of what he can provide, filling those types of gaps. I think this could be a good spot for him. Run, play free, knock down shots, drive, make passes, defend in this free-flowing system, become more confident, become more comfortable. Like, I like the spot for him. Charlotte naturally has to stay healthy, and LaMelo in particular has to stay healthy. I think the minutes with those two together will be pretty important. He'll take on tougher defensive assignments when he's on the floor. But I do like taking a flyer on the wing if you're the Hornets. And again, I think in this kind of system, in this kind of environment, in terms of just, again, not championship aspirations, it's not if you miss shots, you are on the bench. That kind of freedom can help Josh Green. It did feel like there were just pockets where he was just thinking too much when playing in Dallas. And I don't think they could super afford that. So I'm excited to see what he looks like in a system like that or in a situation like that.
I think that Josh Green, different context, will help him. I think being able, as you mentioned, to just play a little bit more free. I'm not in the specific box of I have to make defense. Every time I get the ball, I have to make a play. I don't have to overthink it. I think he's kind of grown in that way, but I think some of the things that he does might have more of an impact in Charlotte as opposed to Dallas where, hey, that's great, but are you doing A, B, and C? Okay, you're not? Then, okay, come sit next to me. I got this guy who can go do that because we need that. In Charlotte, there's going to be more wiggle room to, oh, wow, you defend like we saw it with Grant Williams. Also, if I can be respectfully messy, what's up with Dallas? Just anyways.
Yep.
I mean, you know what I mean? He can take on some of the matchups that maybe Charlotte didn't necessarily feel like they had a guy to take on. So I think that's a big plus.
There we go. Shout out Josh Green. Let's move to the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's been a little busy for them as well. Their big free agency signing. Isaiah Hartenstein, 3 years, $87 million per Stephen Bondi. That deal is front loaded and the last year is non-guaranteed. Not 100% sure if it's fully non-guaranteed, but at the very least, it's not a fully guaranteed contract in the third year there. 7.8 points, 8.3 rebounds for Isaiah Hartenstein last year. Over 3 offensive rebounds per game, 2.5 assists. 1.2 steals, 1.1 blocks. In terms of other business for the Oklahoma City Thunder, they brought back Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins, taking those low cap holds and saying, hey, we like what you do. Isaiah Joe, we like the shooting. Aaron Wiggins, we like the drives and the shooting and the defense and just the overall connectivity. Here's some multi-year deals. 448 for Isaiah Joe, 5 for 47 for Aaron Wiggins. So it's been a pretty solid offseason for the Oklahoma City Thunder as well. But I guess starting with Isaiah Hartenstein, Steve, just your early thoughts on the fit with him in OKC.
Oh, you threw it to me because you snuck in 30 minutes of Hartenstein content the other day. So I was not expecting for you to pass the ball to me. I think the biggest thing with Hartenstein, right, and it's very funny because everyone was like, OKC needs a big, OKC needs a big, OKC needs a big. And they probably did. I pushed back with how OKC has their style of play to where check and space, check and drive. They look at wings, say, hey, can you do some of the big man stuff? We keep our spacing. They ultimately end up with a big in Isaiah Hartenstein. Very quality big. And I think it's one of those things where when you combine the thought of, hey, we have our proof of concept for our system working. Mm-hmm. Last year to me was a, hey, how far can this take us? How good is this? What do we need? A year of discovery, so to speak. And if your year of discovery ends up in you getting the 1 seed, it's pretty good stuff. Yeah, so you add Alex Caruso, right? Mm-hmm. And now we have the opportunity because we have space. This is the time where we have room to potentially see, okay, does this work? You add Isaiah Hartenstein. And I think that's very important for a couple of reasons. Now, initially, I was a little concerned about how does he fit in with the spacing. But as I've thought about it, we can maintain having a big on the floor for 48 minutes. And so while I'm curious to how they integrate Hartenstein, he can be a hub. We've seen him operate in pick and roll. The rolling where he hits that floater is key. We can add cutting to that group when he's in there. Mm-hmm. And this is, again, assuming he comes off the bench. That's a plus to where Chet does this defensively. We bring Hartenstein. We still have this defensively. We have size. We feel good about it. He proved himself on the defensive end. That's big. The lineup versatility is what kind of starts to pop to me to where, hey, we can go Chet at the 5. We can go Hartenstein at the 5. We can go small if we need to. We could go double big if we need to. That kind of flexibility is where it's like, okay, we're tinkering a little bit. We're pushing this to the max. So I'm intrigued to see how it kind of works. Like, this is coach brain, of course. I'm so sorry to the audience, but it's like, okay, do you start off double big and bring Caruso off the bench? Do you start off with Hartenstein off the bench? That's where my mind's like, hey, which way do you go? But it's a good thing. That's a good problem for OKC to have. I think it enhances their overall depth and punch a little bit.
Yeah. So I like the fit. But one very basic level, I just think Isaiah Hartenstein is very good. And so being able to add a good player, I think, is generally a good thing. Very dull analysis there. But as I think through the OKC fit, no shade, I'm just, but as I think about the Isaiah Hartenstein fit, like he accentuates what they do already. Like you touched on the cutting. With Isaiah Hartenstein as a hub, every cut is live. Even if it's, hey, we're in delay, it looks like we're going to Chicago. Actually, I'm not setting that pin down. I'm just going to cut through. And then you can go to the handoff with the empty side. Oh, if you cut through and they botch that cut is live now. That can just be a shot at the basket versus another Jalen Williams handoff or a Shea handoff when we know how good those guys are. So like being able to accentuate what you're doing already, I think is a positive. Him being able to, at the very least during the regular season, if you're playing double big with Chet at the 4, I'll defend this big guy. You got it. I'll defend the center. If there's another non-shooter or questionable shooter on the floor, Chet, you have that guy. So you can roam around, and now we just completely wall off the rim. As fun as the double teams were last year with OKC, we don't have to lean on that as much if we don't want to now. Like I think he's just so added to what they would do on both ends of the floor. You already mentioned Isaiah Hartenstein as a hub. We saw how many push shots and floaters that man made in the postseason last year. But in general, just adding a different element in the middle of the floor as a scorer. Again, just circling back to the passer, because I do think conceptually, like him and center Jalen Williams did similar things. We'll space you on the opposite wing if necessary. So if this initial action doesn't work, we'll swing it to you. Now you can go into a pick and roll or a handoff on the other side, etc. Isaiah Hartenstein being able to do that while also being a better and more willing / more daring passer than Jalen Williams is, the center, again, that adds another element. I do wonder, first, what is the turnover rate going to look like for OKC? Because to your overall, like, integrate Isaiah Hartenstein point, like figuring out their spacing and figuring out, okay, what exactly is option 2 in the set now that we have Isaiah Hartenstein? Is he going to fake a handoff and drive? How do we space beyond that? What is our cutting timing going to be like now, knowing that, hey, this guy might fake it and go? So what might have been an immediate cut and go through the other side or slide to the corner, I might need to hold an extra second now because he might just fake this and go. So like that part's going to be interesting. And with Hartenstein being, again, a better passer, but a more daring passer than a Chet or a Jalen Williams, what's the early turnover rate for OKC when he's trying to thread the needle on some of these bounce passes? It's like, oh, okay, I need to keep my head up for some of these. So I am interested in that portion. And then zooming outside of Hartenstein, you are going to have to play double big more. And I mentioned on the BR stream with center Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren on the floor together, a little over 100 minutes with those guys on the floor together last year, including the playoffs, a plus 6.5 net rating, which is good. But again, that is a little over 100 minutes. What does an extended sample of Chet Holmgren at the 4 look like? Defensively, I don't worry too much. He has the length. If they're going to switch, now I'm fine with him just kind of funneling. You go to this side and this side only. And we got size and help loading up behind that if necessary. And naturally, if he's just in a traditional pick and roll coverage, he's already one of the best defenders in the league. Offensively, when those pops just become switches, okay, are you more equipped to punish some of these smaller guys switching onto you? Because Dallas certainly made that dare and made that bet during last year's postseason. And just if a smaller guy switches, do you get to the Kristaps mode where, okay, that was a clean switch. You are smaller than me. I'm shooting this 3 anyway, and without hesitation. And something that we talked about last year, particularly in the second half, was, hey, Chet, the 3-point shooting percentage is dwindling second half of the year, but like that part doesn't matter as much. How many of these threes are you actually taking? How quickly are you taking these shots? How willing are you to take these shots? I do think if you're getting a more extended sample of Chet at the 4, it's worth wondering, how clean is that integration going to be for him? If he nails it, this is a home run without much question. Hartenstein was one of the best defenders in the league last year, really good rebounder, really good on the offensive glass, good passer, good intermediate finisher, all that good stuff, good screener, should grease the wheels for a lot of their pick and rolls and handoffs because he's really good at seeking contact. Boom. If Chet also pops at the 4, that's fire. If he does not pop at the 4, Chet is the better and more important player to OKC short-term and long-term. They will prioritize, hey, this ain't working. Isaiah Hartenstein, you went from 29 minutes a game to 23 minutes a game because we can't play y'all two together as much. I don't think that's bad because Hartenstein can still be good. But then you do kind of look at that contract and it's like, okay, it is short-term. It is front-loaded. That's a lot of money for someone who's going to be playing half the game and may not close games if you don't feel good about him and Chet together at the floor. So I guess zooming out, the move feels like a double to me if we're sticking with the baseball analogy. You're still very much on base. It's very much an extra base hit. I need to see what Chet looks like at the 4 to go complete home run, but I do like it.
I'm not sure what to do with the fact that you only called that a double or the fact that you made a baseball analogy on the podcast.
It's very much the latter. That was very much for the dunkers.
Okay.
The base runners, the bunters. Okay. Anyway, continue.
I don't know. I'm in a state of shock right now. So what you got?
Well, if you would like for me to riff on Aaron Wiggins and Isaiah Joe, I can't. As Isaiah Joe was on the fringes of the 6th Man of the Year conversation last year. Very valuable shooter. What's up?
The fringes of what?
Fringes of the six-man conversation.
Whose fringes?
Mine, for one.
Are the fringes in the room with us right now? I don't see any. All due respect, I don't see any fringes.
Okay, that's hey.
Hey, YouTubers, do you see fringes in your?
Do you see fringes? This is bad hate. I would just say the shooting and the scoring was valuable. The screening, I think, accentuated what Shea and Jalen Williams did at ball handlers. The plus-minus numbers certainly made a strong case for Isaiah Joe for how impactful he was with the second unit. Again, I said fringes. He did not finish top 3. He wasn't in my top 3. He was very much on my short list of candidates to consider. So we will leave it there. But with that being said, 4 for 48 is super reasonable for him, especially if he continues to get better defensively. I think he's pretty much neutral or slight positive right now. I think as he gets more minutes, again, the pressure's going to ramp up on him in that regard because he is a smaller guard still. But that kind of value within the system, that kind of as smoothly as he fits, the shooting, again, very valuable for them. I like that deal. And Aaron Wiggins, I feel like I was tweeting it 12 times a month. Like, hey, if OKC doesn't retain him, a good team should be calling the agent of Aaron Wiggins. Because that is a guy that was getting consistent playing time, but it wasn't like a consistent 25 minutes a game. But he's just a wing that can do a little bit of everything. And those guys don't grow on trees. He just felt like prototypical bargaining bin signing, pop somewhere as a full-time star. It's like, how the heck did we let that happen? And OKC very much said, we are not going to let that happen. At least not right now, because that deal is movable if they want to do other things down the line. But I just love what Aaron Wiggins brings to the table. Again, as someone that can screen, someone that can drive, make basic passes. He just keeps the chains going and he defends well as well. So that's what I have on that front.
I think the one thing I'll add is OKC understanding that these are people that can make it to the next step with us. They're important to our journey. Get them paid, keep them. If it doesn't work, we can move them. But that makes a lot of sense to me. I think that's kind of OKC building it out, understanding who they are, trying to maintain that.
All right. I'm going to go dealer's choice with you, Steve. We got Chris Paul we haven't talked about, Tobias Harris we haven't talked about, KCP we haven't talked about. Which one of the three do you want to start with?
Oh, I'm throwing the lob. Go ahead and talk about Chris Paul, big dog.
Okay, Chris Paul is a San Antonio Spur, 1 year, $11 million, which I want to say it was Keith Smith that pointed out that if it does become a buyout with Chris Paul, because he's underneath a certain salary threshold, anyone can sign him, even second apron team. So very strategic. Like, you get the 1 year payday. It's above the minimum, right around the middle of exception, but just low enough to where if we do decide to go the buyout route post deadline, you can't just sign anywhere. So I'm curious to see if he stays the full year in San Antonio. But Chris Paul remains a very, very, very good playmaker and passer and just overall organizer of offense. I think him being able to throw the ball to Victor Wembanyama will be not only incredibly effective, but incredibly fun. And I think even zooming out, if you're point guard, if you're getting 48 minutes of point guard play from Chris Paul and Trey Jones, when are you turning the ball over? If you're San Antonio,
I have an answer. I'm not going to say it on the pod.
Okay, fair enough. But I do think those two in general are just very heady ball handlers. So I think that helps. And very quietly, as we talked about Chris Paul scoring throughout the season on the podcast last year, it was like, hey, where's this jumper? Ooh, the jumper's starting to perk up. Hey, wait, where's this jumper? He closes the year shooting 37% from three and draining 50% of his twos while not getting to the rim at all. So a lot of those are just mid-range jumpers. It's kind of wild that that's where it landed. So I am just here for him playing alongside Victor Wembanyama. And I think less Spurs fans and more just people that watch the Spurs because of Wemby. If Chris Paul is leading your offense instead of Jeremy Sohan, we got the actual point guard playing point guard, the offensive process will probably feel a little bit cleaner. I think Paul is there to associate what Wemby does and what Devin Vassell does and what Keldon Johnson does if he's still there, etc. And high some keys. Like, what does Sohan look like as a screener for Chris Paul? Like, I think there are a lot of fun elements to this group. Again, depending on how long Chris Paul is going to be there. For a 1 year balloon, they like that's pretty good stuff. I'm excited to see CP3 in this group.
It's very funny. A lot of times that we have the discourse about point guards and this team needs a point guard, the answers are funny. The Jeremy Sohan point guard debate ends up with Chris Paul being a San Antonio Spur. Didn't see that coming. I think that Chris Paul is going to have a chip on his shoulder playing in San Antonio. Some of the conversation around him. I think the Golden State context was a little different as far as, hey, you can help us, but we also need you to integrate into this. And he kind of had to adjust. His teams were like, actually, here's a switch, here's drop. Do you want to shoot? You're not playing as many minutes, so your data collection isn't going to be the same. Do you want to shoot? I don't think you want to shoot, so we're going to give you this drop. Or you're going to make plays out of it. So if Chris Paul's back to kind of dissecting teams, the two-man game with Victor should be very fun. Him and Pop should be very fun. So I'm very intrigued to see how that kind of plays out. With Chris Paul, hey, I have a year to remind people of how good I am at this. And I have a context that fits me a lot more. And some of the movement that they have, Chris Paul is a screener for Victor. Chris Paul is a screener, period. That should be fun. So it's going to be one of those things where I want to see what it looks like. The 1 year deal is very funny. Like, we want to maintain flexibility. We want you here. Help us with Victor. But also,
we ain't paying you. I mean,
you know what I mean? That's going to be key. We've seen Chris Paul in this role before when he was in Oklahoma City. So I kind of want to see how much does he improve that. Like, would you be surprised if Chris Paul is now making those same shots in the fourth quarter of games? And now the San Antonio Spurs are making a plucky run, and Nekias starts the dunker spot in 6 months with the San Antonio Spurs making a push for the 5 seed. And I roll my eyes. Would you be surprised? Be honest.
No, especially about the eye rolling part. Can I ask a question that will further make you roll your eyes?
Was good.
So it's weird to say that anything was like quiet with Victor Wembanyama last year because of how good he was. He quietly had a 31 free throw rate, which is pretty darn good for a rookie center. What do you think is going to be next year after spending an entire offseason / training camp with Chris Paul?
You don't want my answer to that question.
Hey, if we start seeing Wemby rip throughs, or as Wemby was running pick and roll last year, we get Wemby just putting someone in jail, which is just a very funny thing to try to visualize. He averaged over 5 free throw attempts a game last year. If that's at 7.5, I just say I'm saying it in July, so you ain't mad in November. That's all I got on that front. And any closing Chris Paul thoughts?
No, je ne sais pas, mon ami.
Okay, fair enough. Well, let's circle back to Detroit. Tobias Harris, 2-year deal, $52 million. No options on the deal per James Edwards of The Athletic, which was interesting to me. I figured that was very much going to be a 1+1 type ordeal. But any immediate thoughts on the Tobias Harris fit in Detroit?
This is the intriguing part about the league where, hey, we are team. We have to spend money. You are a free agent who can play. Come take this money real quick. Bruce Brown adjacent deal. I think Tobias Harris return to Detroit was not on my bingo card. But again, I think it's Detroit, hey, we have youth, but we also need solid players around this youth. Let's see if we can blend it together. I think he should fit into what Detroit would want to run, especially as they kind of have different lineups, playing off Cade, being able to space the floor, being able to post up, driving. He's more of a threat for Detroit. So this context should help him and allow him to beat Tobias in a more aggressive way than maybe the Philadelphia box where, hey, actually pass it to him. Or, hey, if you can't defend this person, we're going to attack you. So it's more of a context deal for me than anything else. What say you?
Yeah, I got you. Like, I think just to bounce off of the context point very quickly, I think zooming outside of Tobias, my mind kind of goes to, hey, so how many of these minutes at the 4 are available now? Like, how often are we getting Asar at the 4? If we're not seeing Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart together at the 5 and the 4, is Isaiah Stewart now just the backup 5? As James Wiseman didn't get a qualifying offer, he's an unrestricted free agent. We'll see where he lands, etc. So, like, what does the front court minutes look like? Like, how often are we seeing Tobias at the 3? Like, what is that portion going to look like? Not that it can't be sorted out, but like those are some of my immediate questions outside of this is the Tobias skill set and this is why it helps Cade, etc. Like I also find like it's weird to kind of walk this line when talking about Tobias because I think it's fair to acknowledge that by all accounts he is a tremendous locker room dude. But also, like, I don't want to treat him like 36-year-old vet that can't really play like that. He just helps the locker room. He averaged 17 a night last year. Like, he averaged 17, 7, and 3. Like, he's still a good player. I think the contract and the noise around the contract certainly soured some of the perception of Tobias Harris. Also, you can't be putting up the kind of stat lines that you put up in crucial playoff games for the Sixers, like price tag or not. If you are relied on to be a third option and you have to score and you have to shoot, you can't afford the quiet scoring nights when Joel doesn't have it or Tobias or Tyrese is being treated a certain way. So I'm not to say that none of the criticism for Tobias Harris was fair, because I think a good bit of it was. But like I don't want to lose sight of the fact that this is a combo forward that can score, that can shoot. And because of the roster construction in Philly the last few years, like he's had to take on the types of defensive assignments that don't really fit him. And he was mostly up for that challenge. Again, not making an all defense case for me, anything like that, but generally competed on that end and held firm against some of the power wings that he was tasked with defending. Like he's still good. Like I think he's going to make this Pistons team better. He's going to make life easier for Cade, for Jaden Ivey whenever he's in. And some of the young guys. But I do just in general have like some lineup/minute questions surrounding the front court now with him being there.
Well, I mean, it's a chance to reshape perception to a degree and remind people what I could possibly do. The Philadelphia run did not end how anyone wanted it to for each party, but okay, let me see if I can remind folks of what I can do. I had a tough time trying to figure out a Tobias fit because it's like, okay, is it Detroit? Is it Utah? Does he try and become like six man for a potentially good team? But hey, I mean, the bag is there. Let's remind people what I can do and see what happens.
Yeah, there's still a bag to be grabbed. Speaking of former Pistons, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, one of the earlier signings of the free agency period or the moratorium period, 3 years, $66 million. KCP averaged a shade over 10 points per game, shot 40.6% from three on over 4 attempts last year. One of the better defenders in the league. Again, I didn't have an official vote, but I would have had him on my all defense second team. We had that episode. You can go back and watch/listen if you want. This feels good. This feels good for Orlando. His shooting is going to be very important for this group. As handoff heavy as Orlando was last year, him being able to flaw for those handoffs and just get to that elbow jumper, just to spice things up and, I guess add to the shot profile considering how mid-range heavy Orlando was last year. But having that kind of element is different. Having that kind of defense alongside Jalen Suggs, that is not going to be a fun defensive backcourt to face. So if I just imagine being veteran guard 4 games and 6 nights, the 4th game is against Orlando, and now here's Jalen Suggs and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Like, what? I would be annoyed if that's what I had to deal with, in addition to just the general size that they have. But I like the fit. I feel like the money is reasonable, which then makes me go to the Denver side. Like, hey, man, I understand second apron stuff. It's not invalid to have concerns about that. KCP was very important for what you did, though. And it's not going to be easy to replace all the things that he did, especially at that price point. But I really like this fit for Orlando. They got better with this one. And they didn't have to really break the bank to do it.
No, he fits right in. And we've seen Kentavious Caldwell-Pope help a team grow, tie things together, be the glue. His ability to space the floor is huge for an Orlando team that needed that based on some of the actions they run. He's going to fit right in to what they do offensively. He's going to fit right into what they do defensively. And now you're going to be able to put lineups out there where actually we might be able to switch 1 through 4 and not even blink. And now what do you do with that, with our activity? So I think that's a big piece to Orlando taking the next step. You need people that are going to fit into what you do as a unit. And I think that's where I get excited because Orlando loves defense. They love activity. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope does that every single night. He enhances them offensively to where, actually, you know what? We have someone who can space the floor in some of these actions to where, do you really want to help off of that? You have to make a decision. It would get interesting if teams try and throw switches at Orlando, but that's something they'll have to fight through during the regular season. But I think that's a really, really good signing for Orlando as far as taking what we have, building on it, trying to get to the next step, and aid this group. Because again, Paolo's playmaking, Franz's playmaking, it's already kind of built in. So KCP can now just be an addition to it, as opposed to, well, we need KCP to do X, Y, Z. No.
Yeah.
I mean, because, hey, that's pretty fun, especially if you dip into some of the potential small ball lineups where we could just cause havoc.
Yeah, that gets a lot of fun. Then just very quickly to the defensive context. Again, a whole lot of length behind him. He's playing alongside Jalen Suggs. He doesn't have to be, or frankly, he isn't Orlando's best perimeter defender. Like we have KCP like figuratively and literally getting to defend twos now. Versus, last year, going back to the playoffs, like, hey, you have to take on Anthony Edwards. In a situation where Minnesota comes into town, or you going to Minnesota, that may just be Jalen Suggs. And now you get to hound someone else or just provide help if you're on a non-spacer. Like KCP being in that kind of context, I think it'd be helpful, especially if some of your concerns about giving KCP his new deal is, hey, he is 32, 33. What's it going to look like moving forward? If you can take some of the regular season mileage off of him because you have another guy and a younger guy at that in Jalen Suggs that can just take on those assignments, I think that's helpful. So I think that's a smooth fit for him as well.
And also, here's the thing. You brought Gary Harris back.
Yeah.
So now Gary Harris can now slide down a little bit. And now when I get these minutes, I go hard. And now you kind of have some continuity there. So fantastic. Do we need to go rapid fire? We're deep in this pod.
We are indeed deep in the pod. Shout out to Gary Harris. Also, shout out to Goga Batadze. 3 years, $25 million to return to Orlando just to do all of the Orlando bookkeeping there. I guess last big one, and then we can go rapid fire, just because the Clippers did a whole lot. Brought James Harden back, 2 years, $70 million, a player option on the second year. So we'll see how long the commitment ends up being with James Harden with the Clippers. But as far as newbies coming in, Derrick Jones Jr., 3 years, $30 million. Nicholas Batum, not really a new face as he was just there, but 2 years, $9.6 million. Chris Dunn and the Clippers have agreed to a deal, though that isn't official yet as they're trying to figure out sign and trade opportunities. But it does look like Chris Dunn will be a Clipper. Mo Bamba signing a 1-year deal with the Clippers as well. If you're going to lose Paul George, and it's not like you can just sign another all-star wing to replace him, I think adding all of the defense and versatility and length that you can is certainly a pathway that you can take, especially as we talked about the Clippers early last year as they were trying to find themselves, particularly after the James Harden trade. Hey, the defensive foundation is already here. Y'all just got to figure out this offense stuff. And so just kind of doubling down into, we made this play slower. We are going to be a super annoying defensive squad. And then at the end of games, you got to deal with James Harden 2-man game and Kawhi Leonard when healthy. I understand why you may want to lean into that formula. So adding DJJ, we'll see what the threes land. He shot 34% from three last year. But if he's able to knock down shots, the defense certainly pops. He adds a level of athleticism that this group needed. Nicholas Batum, the ultimate gap filler, can knock down shots, can act as a handoff hub, can receive a handoff and get downhill, can keep things going as a passer, defensively can defend a little bit of everyone. I think as you were looking at potential small ball lineup combinations for the Clippers last year, I know for me, like I couldn't get to a comfortable small ball 5 for the group. Nicholas Batum can slot right into that. It's like, oh, okay, it's just him because we've seen him do it before in this literal uniform. Let's lean into some of these smaller loonies there. I think that helps. Chris Dunn, one of my favorite point of attack defenders in the league. We will once again see where the shot lands for him. He has shot well over the last 2 years in Utah, 39.5%, but under 2 attempts per game. Teams still largely defend him as a non-shooter, help off when he's spaced. They duck under and pick and rolls against him. The drives do pop. He is a good passer. So I think this is a fun situation for him. And again, if you're just ramping up the defense with this Clippers group, you could do a lot worse than Chris Dunn and Mo Bamba. Certainly a different type of backup big than what the Clippers had last year, but someone that can pop, someone that can roll, willing shooter from above the break. So you actually have a stretch adjacent big for this Clippers group. unlock some of the 5-out spacing that Ty Lue wants to get to anyway. If he holds up enough defensively, if he rebounds well enough defensively, it's a fun spot for him. So those are my rapid fire thoughts on all the Clipper things.
Defense. Hey, you know what? Actually, person who has a podcast, you had a good point. We do need some more of those guys back. Like, it's kind of a wild journey to think about. Like, hey, so we had Robert Covington and Nick Batum, but then that kind of turned into James Harden. But now we got Batum back and Derrick Jones Jr., but we don't have Paul George. So we kind of back at like what we was doing before, low key. We're going to reload that formula back up. So I think having defenders is going to be key for the Clippers. Being annoying is going to be key for the Clippers. I think you nailed it. So, yeah, we going rapid fire?
Yeah, let's go rapid fire. Quick thoughts, the Anthony Melton in Golden State. 1 year, 12.8.
Passes the ball.
I see.
What are your quick thoughts on the Anthony Melton to Golden State? Because it feels like they might have had him at home.
I see. I see what you did there. Yeah, they do have another guard on the roster who recently accepted a player option to return there. We'll see if he actually stays. Could be traded as a tradable deal. But I do like D'Anthony Melton quite a bit. Really good defender. Shooting has came along. We'll see if that holds up in Golden State. I'm curious to see how much of the screening stuff that he's going to be able to do or how willing he will be to do so. But he is a competent piece, like really good defender. Can make plays against tilted defenses. Shot well in Philadelphia. Again, if he stays healthy, I think he's just going to be a really quality piece for this team. So add some athleticism. I get it. The 1 year commitment is interesting. And that just being MLE money means that he could be moved again if things go haywire for Golden State. So we'll keep an eye on that front. Mason Plumlee in Phoenix, replacing Drew Eubanks.
Love it. Great deal. If you're Phoenix, you now have continuity with your bigs. We have two bigs who can screen, who can roll, who can be hubs. We can run dribble handoffs, so that should help them. I think it's a really good upgrade for Phoenix on that end of the floor.
I like it. I think you want to add some movement. You want to add some ball movement in particular. Mason Plumlee can certainly make short roll plays. So if you are trying to trap Devin Booker in particular, and Mason Plumlee is your roller, he can keep things moving on that front. So I like the deal. We'll see where the defense lands with him, because more so with the personnel that's around him. I think he is better in the activity than he is just purely switching or being in a deep drop. So we'll see like what the mind meld is going to be there with him and Mike Budenholzer. But I think it's nice. While we're on Phoenix, Royce O'Neal back 4 years, $44 million. Bobo also back on a 1 year deal. I would assume it's going to be at the minimum or a little bit above that. Haven't seen the official figures on that front, but love the Royce fit. He did good things for Phoenix last year. You know how I feel about Bobo, so I'm not going to spend 20 minutes on there. Risk getting in trouble. But quick Phoenix thoughts there. Again, mentioned Mason Plumlee replacing Drew Eubanks. Drew Eubanks is a Utah Jazz. 2 years, $10 million. I am just really interested in Utah's front court. What exactly are they going to do? Like the Walker Kessler trade rumblings, you cut Omer Yurtseven, you bring in Drew Eubanks. John Collins is an NBA player that plays for the Utah Jazz. So like that sounds more being the John Collins than I intended. It's more so like you just traded for him, and now it's a whole bunch of talks and whispers around the big man room. Just like, do we know if Collins is going to be the 4 or the 5 with this group? Also, is Lauri Markkanen being traded? Like, I more so feel bad for John Collins. But we'll keep an eye on the Utah front court. Speaking of front court players, Jalen Smith in Chicago, 3 years, $27 million, 10 points, 5.5 rebounds last year, shot 42% from 3, 69% on 2s. One of the more underrated play finishers in the league last year. Do you like the fit in Chicago?
Yes.
There we go. Add some spacing for the young guys. I dig it. I guess last big thing, we have a lot of re-signings. Donovan Mitchell getting the bag, 3 year, $150.3 million max extension. Player option in year 3, so you can ring alarm bells if you like. This is more so after that second year, I now have 10 years of service. I can now get the mega bag. Could be eligible for a 5-year extension worth over $380 million if he opts out of that third year. So kudos to Donovan Mitchell. I don't think we need to spend time on how good Donovan Mitchell is. Jason Tatum, 5 years.
Hey, hold on. Hey, I got 2 years.
Hey, we'll see. We'll see.
No. Hey.
A whole lot of movement with the Boston Celtics and their money. Jason Tatum, 5 years, $315 million extension.
Paid.
Derek White, 4 years, $125.9 million.
Paid.
Nekias Caldwell-Pope got a multi-year deal. I would imagine that's minimum adjacent.
Thanks for your help.
Luke Cornett also received a 1-year deal.
We appreciate you.
Okay, there you go. And the Celtics may be getting sold, but I guess we got to wait on more info on that front, so we won't stay hanging here too much longer.
Appreciate y'all for the championship. Here's your money. Also,
gosh darn it.
Hey, you remember that hallway conversation from a certain player? Look.
I am not doing this with you. The Nuggets and Jamal Murray expected to agree to a 4-year, $209 million extension. Quick shout out to him. Patrick Williams, 5 years, $90 million to return to Chicago. Were you excited? Or were you surprised by the deal?
Not surprised. It felt like with how he played during that stretch for Chicago, they weren't just going to let him go. And so to get him on a deal where he could potentially be moved or he can grow within it, based on what they did with Kobe White, I'm not shocked that the Bulls did that. Now, value, I'm not debating value with nobody because the cap is different now and the aprons and all that good stuff. But it makes sense as far as teams being in, let's keep what we've had until we need to make a move.
There we go. Okay. All right. Well, then last transaction I actually want to spend some time on that we can just get out of here. The Pelicans and the Hawks agreeing to a deal. Dejounte Murray, you are a New Orleans Pelican. Larry Nance Jr., Dyson Daniels, EJ Liddell, a 25 first rounder from the Lakers, a 27 first rounder, the least favorable of New Orleans or Milwaukee's first, going to the Atlanta Hawks. How do we feel about the Dejounte Murray fit in New Orleans?
From a Hawk to a Pelican, I think that Dejounte Murray is going to help the New Orleans Pelicans. I think his size is going to help them defensively. I know people have questions about DeJounte's defense based on what the Atlanta run was looking like. I think he helps them. I think having more size, having more activity based on the Pelican scheme is going to help them. Self-creation is going to be key. So it's going to be interesting to see how much pick and roll play does he have. Is he going to go right to the mid-range pull-up, or is he going to be able to drive and force teams to help and kick? Where the action's going to look like with Zion. I think it's a plus. You try and maximize this window that you have, especially if, hey, what are we doing with Brandon Ingram? I get it. I think the cost was pretty good to add Dejounte Murray to your team, and Atlanta obviously moving in a different direction. Nekias, your thoughts?
Well, I have lots of thoughts that I cannot express on this podcast. Dejounte Murray is a very good basketball player. I'm curious to see what the fit is going to look like in New Orleans. To your point about offensive processing, a lot of mid-range pull-ups for Dejounte. He can knock down those shots, particularly in clutch time. If you're thinking about New Orleans' overall shot profile, that could get interesting depending on if Brandon Ingram is still there. CJ McCollum certainly adjusted his game last year, took a very large share of his attempts from behind the arc to kind of aid the spacing alongside Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram. So again, I think that it's pretty much an incomplete grade for me right now with New Orleans because, like, as you kind of alluded to the defense thing with Dejounte, like, I do think he was certainly below all defense level in Atlanta. And it's worth wondering, like, okay, if he does perk back up, what exactly is he perking back up to? Him having Herb Jones by his side will certainly help on that front. If he is motivated, we should see better effort. We should hopefully see more discipline off ball from Dejounte Murray. But it's mostly an incomplete grade because who exactly is the center for the New Orleans Pelicans right now? Jonas Valanciunas, who I meant to mention earlier, because I honestly like the fit with him in Washington, but JV's gone. And Larry Nance Jr. is gone in this trade. And I know there are, let's say, competing thoughts about Larry Nance's stint in New Orleans. But like, he did add a level of switchability and just the overall ability to go small with that group. So until I know what the center room is, and I guess ultimately what happens with Brandon Ingram, he was linked to the Sacramento Kings. We'll see if that actually happens or not. It'd be very funny if we finish recording and then he gets traded and I'm just mad for like 2 days. But it's mostly incomplete for me. Dejounte is very clearly good. Was fine on catch and shoot threes last year. We'll see if that continues to hold or if that improves. I'm curious to see what the pick and roll chemistry with him and Zion is actually going to look like. Because Dejounte, is a fine passer, not a super aggressive one. So I guess just general lob chemistry, pocket pass chemistry, what that part's going to look like can get a little bit interesting. So it's fine. And I think I do like the price for Atlanta. Like if they are going to decide to keep Trae Young, at least until the deadline, we'll see what happens on that front. Hey, let's just spend this entire offseason getting a whole bunch of wings. Let's just get a whole bunch of length. Let's get a whole bunch of switchability. Let's see what that looks like. Dyson Daniels with that Atlanta group should be interesting. So I think that'll do it for me with Atlanta. Also, AJ Griffin no longer an Atlanta Hawk. He's a Houston Rocket. Another draft day trade there. Shout out to Bronny being drafted 55. Wendell Moore is a Detroit Piston. The Warriors ran off on Lindy Waters III somehow. I'll save my real thoughts on the next episode of the pod. Any closing thoughts, Steve? Well, while he laughs, Jalen McDaniels, you are a Sacramento King. Davion Mitchell, Sasha Vezenkov, at least for now. Toronto Raptors, another draft day or draft adjacent trade that happened since we recorded on Thursday. Very shameless. Very shameless on your part. I just want to
well, just real quick, scale of 1 to 10, how mad are you?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
There we go.
Shout out to Stephanie Dolson shooting them threes.
Continue to shoot a lot of threes. What was it? 6 made threes against the Las Vegas Aces on Saturday. The 20-point game streak for A'ja Wilson ended on Saturday as Buddy. Well, the jumper wasn't there for A'ja, which that just happens sometimes. Every time she tried a spin move against the Mystics, here are 3 jerseys there to meet you. Mm-hmm. Which you have to say, like, okay, A'ja, after the second time, like, hey, just either kill the spin or you just got to look for the outlet at that point because they are just collapsing. Like, fair criticism there. But overall, like, Washington was very much committed, which would be fine if Chelsea Gray did not decide that she was just not going to miss at all during that basketball game.
That was a quick reminder. Oh, yeah, Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Blum, when they do stuff, there's not much you can do with the Las Vegas Aces.
Yeah, and that's with, as the Aces were trying to find it offensively, I think a 19-point first half for Jackie Young. I'll just knock down all these. Oh, you're going under again. Okay, well, I'll just take this jumper. Thank you. So the Aces undefeated, at least as of recording. They play the Indiana Fever later tonight, but Aces undefeated since Chelsea Gray has come back.
Real big. Storm on a win streak at home. Lynx still doing the thing. Lynx Liberty. Should be a fun game. Also, real quick, my A'ja Wilson shirt is due to be delivered in August. Can I be shameless real quick? It was good. What I
in
did.
August?
What I do.
That's tough.
I'm a star too.
That's true. Shout out A'ja Wilson.
Yes,
I'm a start.
No, she's the MVP. We can just you can get a Sharpie out. It's fine.
Ooh, yeah, it's getting kind of tough. Oh, I guess also just very quickly on the news note, as we'll get to react to it on the next episode of the pod. The All-Star rosters are being announced tonight. Aces Liberty at 9:30 Eastern. The All-Star team announcements are happening at 9 Eastern, like as part of WNBA Countdown. That's going to be fun. That is going to be fun. I think we are also just going to get the reveal of what the media and player ballots are. And buddy, I'm just going to forewarn you, that is going to be 15 minutes on the pod. So just prepare yourselves for that. There's going to be a lot to react to on that front, I feel like. So, ooh-wee.
All right.
Also, surprised you didn't get to this one, but I'll do the outro very quickly. Shout out to Jordan Canada, who is very important to what the Atlanta Dream want to do on both ends of the floor.
Sure is. Hit the horns.
We will indeed hit the horns. Thank you for listening to and or watching this episode of The Dunker Spot. If you haven't already, please subscribe to us. We are on Apple, Spotify, RIP Google, Stitcher, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us. You can find us here every Tuesday on this here channel. Day after Monday, the day before Wednesday. So please subscribe, continue to support. We have other great content dropping on the channel. So stay tuned on that front. You can follow me on Twitter at Nekias NBA. You can follow Steve on Twitter at SteveJones20. Join the Dunker Spot community on Twitter if you haven't already. If you would like to watch some basketball with us as the NBA season is over, but Basketball is not. Come rock with us with the Duncan Spot watch parties. The link is in the podcast description. It's free to create a profile. Fun second screen experience. We're breaking down plays sometimes when my internet works. We try to bring things up, break down what we just saw. So blame my internet, etc. But overall, it's a cool place with a whole lot of cool people. So if you want to hang out, watch some hoop, talk some hoop, ask some questions, talk about life stuff, bring your food opinions, talk about movies, music, etc. We do a little bit of everything in these watch parties. We game sometimes, 2K, FIFA, etc. We got Fortnite streams from some of our other folks that hop on stage sometimes. So it's a really wild but fun experience. So come rock with us if you dare. But with that, we will catch y'all later in the week.
Hey, how were you the first person to get the Asian shirt?